tutorial. Today we'll walk through how to paint this cherry blossom branch on a dark background. Even if it might look a little bit intimidating, I think this could be a great challenge for any of you, and it will teach so many important skills about controlling watercolors. I'm using a square piece from my Winsor&Newton watercolor pad. I recommend taking a large enough piece where you have plenty of space to work with the flowers and all the details in them. All the tools I'm using in this video are linked in the description, and now we'll just tape this piece down with a washi tape, and after that we are ready to draw a quick pencil sketch. I think that the pencil sketch is probably the most important part of the process. I know I couldn't paint anything without the sketch underneath, and for me, whenever I draw flowers, I like to start by making a small circle defining the center part of the flower. I think it's just so much easier to draw the petals evenly when you have that circle in the middle. And another thing is to use some sort of reference picture. Luckily, there are so many pictures of cherry blossoms, and you don't need to follow any one picture exactly. You can always change things up and maybe remove a few flowers or add something to the picture. I'll show you the picture I used as my main guide for these flowers, and you can see that it looks quite different than the end result. But what I liked here were the shapes and angles of few of these flowers, so that's why I decided to go with it. I'm sorry if you can't see the pencil sketch very well here. I tried to use a pretty light hand and also erase any unnecessary lines so that in the end we only have the main lines for the flowers and some indication for the branch. But after that, we are finally ready to take out the watercolors. I'm using this Winsor&Newton Professional Watercolor Travel Kit. I've been loving these watercolors. They're more on the pigmented side, so they dry pretty true to the color you apply. Anyway, I decided to start with the flowers today, and then we'll paint the background last. You could of course do it the other way around, but I thought it would be more interesting for this video to start with the flowers. I'll leave all the main color names I'm using to this screen, and there were actually only a few colors I mostly used throughout this painting. Now, I wish I knew how to explain very easily how I painted these flowers, but the truth is that I didn't know what I was doing either. I just decided to keep switching between this a little bit bluer grayish tone that I thought added some shadowy appearances and a more bright reddish pink tone that brings out the actual color of these flowers. I think it's a good idea to leave some white slivers between the paints. For example, if you have a folded edge on the petal, I think it's a good idea to leave that folded part white at this point, because it will help to differentiate those areas from the rest of the petal and add some shadow and highlight contrast. I think generally the middle parts of the flowers are usually a little bit darker, and whenever the petals overlap with each other, it's a good idea to add some shadow under the overlapping petal, which again will just add some dimension. So I would just advise you to experiment with this step. It doesn't have to be perfect. All my petals didn't end up perfect either, but it's all part of the learning process. Also, one thing is to keep all the colors very light at this stage. So if you accidentally put too much color down, you can swipe off some water from your brush and try to blend that color in a little bit wider area. And also, something I always recommend you to have somewhere close by are tissue papers that you can use to tap off any excess water or color if you feel like you need it. But anyway, when we have these first color layers on the flowers, we are then gonna start adding some darkness to the middle parts. I think this is the step that will completely transform these flowers and make them look much nicer. So I took some much brighter and darker reddish pink tones and started to add them to the center with this much thinner detailing brush. Then I decided to add a little bit of orange tone to the small dots in the middle and use as thin lines as possible to connect them to the center. After those are somewhat done, we'll also add some color to the rest of the picture, like the small flower buds and the branch. I also added some more lines and shadows to the flowers to define some of the petals a little bit better. If you feel like your flowers are blending with the background too much, you can try to add a thin line with a grayish tone along the outlines of the flowers, which might help to bring out the shapes a little bit better. I was actually pretty happy with how everything looked at this stage, so if you don't have much time or don't want to bother with the background, I think you could totally leave it here, or maybe even add some thin black outlines to everything with a black pen for some extra attention. But if you're in for a more dramatic result and want to challenge yourself with the background, that's what we're gonna do next. So because we already have the flowers in place, we'll need to be a little bit careful when adding these next steps. The flowers should be completely dried here, and now we are just gonna go around them as carefully as possible with a layer of water. By doing this, the colors will blend smoothly with all the areas we apply water to, and it will help to make the areas around the flowers look much more flawless and make everyone wonder how we managed to keep the flowers separate from the background. I decided to work on the lower half first because I was afraid that the water here would start drying too quickly. And after I had gone over everything with the layer of water, I picked this dark grayish blue shade that I used for the whole background. I wasn't completely sure what I wanted at this point and how the colors would meld together, so I added some darker dots and even some pink and reddish colors mixed with the gray shades. To be honest, I didn't end up liking this as much as I hoped, because I felt like there was almost too much variation in the background that was distracting the attention from the flowers, and everything was kind of blending together a little bit too much. You might also notice that when we add this dark color all around the flowers, the shadows and details that looked fine against a white background might need a little bit more intensity now. I tried leaving some lighter areas, especially here at the top part, but after this had all tried, I definitely felt like we needed to deepen the color a little bit more and also smooth it out a little bit. So after the first layer had completely dried again, I basically repeated the same steps, and this time I mixed a little bit more blue shade to the gray to just get everything a little bit more vibrant. I still wanted there to be some texture in the background, so I took out a tissue paper and decided to tap the color off from some areas that eventually created the look I was going for much better than the dark dots did. So now after adding all those dark colors, the flowers look quite light and washed out against them. So the last step is to intensify some of the colors and fix any small details around the flowers to blend them better with the background. Adding some of the same gray tone along the edges of the petals might really help to bring out some shadows again, and I also felt like especially the middle parts needed to be much darker to compete with the darkness of the background. Also, the branch needed some more shadows, and slowly I felt like the intensity was starting to look much more balanced throughout this whole picture. As I mentioned, the result now is a lot more dramatic than what it was in the beginning, but still leaving some white areas in the flowers is a really good idea to maintain the most highlighted spots. Then as the very last step, I decided to sprinkle some white gouache paint all over the painting to add some white sparkle dust that I think makes pretty much any painting better. And I did add a few white and darker dots on the flowers and around them with the same small brush. But after that, all that's done is to remove the tapes and reveal the final result. I was pleasantly surprised by how this turned out, and I really hope you'll feel the same way if you decided to try it at home. I think around 3 years ago, when I started to paint flowers in my bullet journal, I could have never achieved a painting like this, so I hope it gives you some hope and a reminder that some consistent practice will take you so far. But I think that wraps up today's video. If this was your first time around here and you'd like to stay tuned for more, please consider subscribing. I also have a Patreon and a shop if you're interested to check those out. Everything is linked in the description. But I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!